The message that changed everything. The galaxy had grown quiet over the centuries, and that silence made Captain Sarah Chen nervous. She stood on the observation deck of the Earth-ship Horizon and watched the stars drift past like distant candles in an endless dark. Humanity had been exploring space for almost 300 years now, and in all that time they had met exactly 7 alien species. 5 of them wanted nothing to do with humans. One had tried to trade with them before disappearing into the outer reaches. And one, the Krell Dominion, had been watching humanity with interest that felt more like hunger than curiosity. The Krell were ancient beyond human understanding. They had ruled 40 star systems before Earth had even discovered fire. Their ships were massive constructions of metal and crystal that moved through space like floating cities. Their technology was so advanced that human scientists could barely understand how it worked. They had weapons that could crack planets and shields that laughed at human missiles. They had conquered and absorbed dozens of civilizations, and each time they grew stronger by taking the best of what their victims had to offer. For 200 years the Krell had left humanity alone. They watched from a distance and sent occasional messages through automated probes. The messages were always the same. They asked about human culture and technology. They asked about Earth's resources and colony locations. They asked questions that seemed innocent but always felt like someone was taking measurements for a cage. The United Earth Assembly had debated what to do about the Krell for decades. Some wanted to hide and hope the Krell would forget about them. Others wanted to build weapons and prepare for war. Most just wanted to keep exploring and hope that everything would work out somehow. Then 3 months ago everything changed. The Krell sent a new kind of message. This one did not come through a probe. It came through every communication channel that humanity possessed all at the same time. Every television screen on Earth showed it. Every radio picked it up. Every computer displayed it. Even personal devices that should have been secure received it. The message was simple and terrifying. The Krell Dominion announced that humanity had been chosen. Chosen for what, the message did not say. But it gave humanity 30 days to send representatives to the Krell home world to discuss terms. If no representatives came, the Krell would consider it an act of rejection and respond accordingly. The assembly met in emergency session for 3 days straight. The arguments were fierce and desperate. Some said they should send diplomats immediately and try to negotiate whatever the Krell wanted. Others said it was a trap and that anyone who went would never return. A few suggested they should run, pack up every human they could and flee to the furthest reaches of space. But there was nowhere to run that the Krell could not find them. In the end they made a decision that shocked everyone. They would send representatives, but they would also send a message of their own. Ambassador James Martinez was chosen to lead the delegation. He was a thin man with dark eyes and hair that had gone white despite him being only 50 years old. He had negotiated treaties with 4 alien species and had walked away from situations that should have killed him. He knew how to talk and when to listen and when to stand firm even when everything told him to back down. Sarah Chen was assigned to command his escort. She brought the Horizon and 2 smaller vessels, the Defiance and the Messenger. 3 ships against a civilization that commanded thousands. It was meant to show respect without showing fear. It was meant to say that humanity came in peace but would not come crawling. The journey to the Krell home world took 18 days. They traveled through jump gates that the Krell had built centuries ago, massive rings of dark metal that bent space itself. Each jump took them further from Earth and deeper into Krell territory. Sarah watched her crew during those days and saw the fear they tried to hide. Young Lieutenant Marcus Webb checked his weapons 3 times a day even though there was nothing to shoot at. Engineer K. Patel barely slept and spent her time running diagnostics on systems that were already perfect. Even Dr. Robert Mills, who was usually calm about everything, started checking the medical base supplies over and over as if he expected to need them soon. Sarah understood their fear because she felt it too. But she also felt something else. She felt anger at being summoned like servants. She felt pride in her crew and her species. She felt determination to face whatever was coming without showing weakness. When they finally arrived at the Krell home world, Sarah stood on the bridge and stared at what she saw. The planet was 3 times the size of Earth and covered in structures that reached into space itself. Millions of ships moved between the planet and its 7 moons. Energy readings came from everywhere, enough power to run all of human civilization 1,000 times over. This was the heart of the Dominion, and it was more vast than anything humanity had ever built. Ambassador Martinez came to the bridge and stood beside Sarah. He looked at the planet and was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke, and his voice was steady. They want us to be afraid. That's why they brought us here. They want us to see all of this and understand how small we are. Sarah nodded. Is it working? Martinez smiled slightly. Absolutely. But being afraid doesn't mean we surrender. It just means we understand what we're dealing with. 2 Krell ships approached and guided them to a docking station that floated above the planet. The station was larger than most human cities. As they docked, Sarah gave orders to her crew. Stay alert. Keep the ships ready to move. If anything goes wrong, you jump back to human space and warn everyone. Don't wait for us. Don't try to be heroes. Just go. Her crew nodded, and Sarah could see they understood what she was really saying. She was telling them that she and Martinez might not come back. The Krell delegation met them in a chamber that was designed to intimidate. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into darkness. The walls showed images of all the civilizations the Krell had absorbed. Hundreds of species, thousands of worlds, all conquered and made part of the Dominion. At the center of it all sat High Chancellor Vorn. He was massive even by Krell standards. His crystalline skin reflected the light in strange patterns. His 6 arms rested on the armrests of a throne that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of black stone. His eyes, 3 on each side of his head, focused on Martinez and Sarah with an intensity that made Sarah feel like she was being dissected. Vorn spoke through a translator device, and his voice filled the enormous chamber. Humanity. We have watched you for so long. We have studied your history and your nature. You are young and weak and chaotic. You fight among yourselves even when facing extinction. You destroy your own world and then spread to others. You are everything that civilized species should not be. Martinez stepped forward, and his voice did not shake. If that's what you believe, then why did you summon us here? Vorn leaned forward slightly. Because despite all your flaws, you have something we have not seen in a very long time. You have potential. You adapt quickly. You survive what should kill you. You refuse to accept defeat even when defeat is certain. These are qualities the Dominion can use. Sarah felt her blood run cold. She understood now what "chosen" meant. The Krell didn't want to destroy humanity. They wanted to absorb it. They wanted to take humans and make them part of the Dominion, just like they had done to all the other species. Martinez asked the question they both already knew the answer to. And if we refuse? Vorn's expression didn't change, but something in his posture suggested amusement. Then we will take what we want by force. Your colonies will fall. Your ships will burn. Earth itself will be conquered and its people will serve the Dominion whether they wish to or not. But if you accept peacefully, if you join us willingly, then humanity will be given a place of honor in our civilization. You will have protection and resources and access to technology beyond your imagination. Martinez was quiet for a moment. Sarah could see him thinking, weighing options that all seemed terrible. Finally he spoke, and his words were chosen carefully. You've given us a choice that isn't really a choice at all. But I can't make this decision alone. This affects every human being alive and every human who will ever be born. I need to return to Earth and present your offer to our government. Vorn made a sound that the translator rendered as laughter, though it sounded more like grinding stones. Of course. We will give you 30 more days to decide. Return to your people and tell them what you have seen. Tell them about the power of the Dominion. Tell them that resistance will only bring suffering. We are patient. We can wait 30 days for you to accept the inevitable." Martinez nodded slowly and turned to leave. Sarah followed him, her mind racing. As they walked back through the corridors of the station, Martinez finally spoke. "They've made a mistake." Sarah looked at him in surprise. "What kind of mistake?" Martinez's expression was grim but determined. "They think they've given us an impossible choice. They think we'll spend 30 days arguing and panicking and finally surrendering because we have no other option. But they don't understand something crucial about humanity." "What's that?" Sarah asked. Martinez stopped and looked directly at her. "They think we're afraid of losing. But humans have been losing battles for our entire history. We've faced extinction a dozen times. We've fought wars we couldn't win and survived disasters that should have killed us all. We know how to lose. What they don't understand is that knowing how to lose doesn't mean we accept it. The decision that shook the stars. The journey back to Earth was different from the journey out. The fear was still there, but it had transformed into something harder and colder. Sarah's crew no longer checked their weapons nervously or ran endless diagnostics. Instead they moved with purpose and spoke in short efficient sentences. They had seen the enemy and understood what was coming. Now they were preparing themselves for what had to be done. Ambassador Martinez spent most of the return trip in his quarters writing his report. Sarah brought him coffee twice a day, and sometimes they would talk about small things that had nothing to do with the Krell. They talked about Martinez's daughter who was studying medicine on Mars. They talked about Sarah's brother who ran a farm on one of the colony worlds. They talked about Earth and home and all the ordinary beautiful things that made life worth living. On the 15th day of their return journey, Martinez asked Sarah to sit with him. He looked tired in a way that went beyond lack of sleep. "I need your honest opinion," he said. "Not as a ship captain but as a human being. What should we do?" Sarah had been thinking about this question for 15 days straight. "I think we tell them no." Martinez nodded slowly. "Even though it means war? Even though we'll probably lose?" Sarah met his eyes. "My grandmother was a soldier in the resource wars. She told me something when I was young. She said that the most important battles aren't the ones you know you can win. They're the ones you can't afford to lose. This is one of those battles. If we surrender now, then everything that makes us human dies anyway. We become part of their empire and our children become servants to their civilization. That's not survival. That's just slow extinction." Martinez smiled sadly. "I thought you might say that. For what it's worth, I agree with you. But I'm afraid of what's going to happen when we tell the Assembly." He was right to be afraid. When they reached Earth and Martinez delivered his report, the Assembly erupted into chaos. The session went on for 4 days without pause. Representatives shouted at each other across the chamber floor. Some demanded immediate surrender to save lives. Others called for war no matter the cost. A few suggested they try to buy more time by negotiating endlessly without ever actually deciding. The public outside the assembly chambers was just as divided. Protests filled the streets of every major city on Earth. Some carried signs calling for peace at any price. Others demanded that humanity stand and fight. News networks showed the same footage over and over, images of the Krell home world and Vorn's throne room and the faces of people trying to decide if they would rather die free or live as slaves. President Elena Vasquez watched it all from her office and felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her like a physical thing. She had been elected to lead humanity into a new age of exploration and prosperity. Instead, she was being asked to decide if her species would go to war against an empire they could not defeat. On the third day of debate, she called a private meeting with Martinez and Sarah along with General Thomas Bradford, who commanded Earth's military forces. They sat in a small room far from the noise of the assembly and spoke quietly. "Tell me the truth," President Vasquez said. If we fight them, do we have any chance at all? General Bradford answered first. Not in a straight fight. The Krell have more ships, better weapons, and thousands of years of experience. If they decide to crush us, they can do it within a year. But, the president asked, because she could hear the word hanging in the air. Bradford leaned forward. But wars aren't decided by who has the most ships. They're decided by who can endure the longest. The Krell are used to quick conquests. They show up with overwhelming force and the other side surrenders. They've never fought a species that kept fighting after the logical point of defeat. We can give them that fight. We can make them pay for every system they take. We can drag this out and make it so expensive that they start to wonder if we're worth the trouble. Martinez added his thoughts. There's something else. The Krell absorbed all those other civilizations because those civilizations allowed themselves to be absorbed. They surrendered their identity in exchange for survival. But every species that did that eventually disappeared. Their culture got diluted. Their people got scattered. Within a few generations, they ceased to exist as anything meaningful. Humanity has to decide what we value more, our lives or our humanity. President Vasquez closed her eyes and was silent for a long time. Finally she opened them and looked at each person in the room. I'm going to address the assembly tomorrow. I'm going to recommend that we reject the Krell offer. But I need to know that you all understand what that means. It means death for millions and maybe billions of people. It means watching our colonies burn and our ships destroyed. It means sending young men and women to die in battles they cannot win. I need to know that you all believe this is the right choice despite all of that. Sarah spoke first. I've seen my crew face their fear. I've watched them go from terrified to determined. They know what we're facing and they're willing to fight anyway. That tells me everything I need to know about what humanity is capable of. Martinez nodded. Every great moment in human history came when we chose the hard path instead of the easy one. This is our moment. Future generations will either remember us as the humans who stood up to tyranny or they'll be part of the Krell Dominion and won't be human at all. General Bradford's voice was firm. I've spent 40 years preparing for wars I hoped would never come. This war is here whether we like it or not. The only question is whether we fight it on our feet or on our knees. I know which one I choose. President Vasquez stood and walked to the window. She looked out at Earth, at the blue oceans and green continents and white clouds that had been humanity's home for all of history. She thought about every human who had ever lived and every human yet to be born. She thought about what they would say about this moment. Then she turned back to the others and her voice was steady and clear. Tomorrow I'll tell the assembly that humanity rejects the Krell offer. We will not surrender our freedom or our identity. We will fight with everything we have for as long as we must. And if we lose, then we lose as humans defending what we believe in rather than as slaves who gave up without trying. The next day President Vasquez stood before the assembly and the cameras that broadcast to every human world. The chamber was packed with representatives and observers. Outside, billions of people stopped what they were doing to watch. She spoke for 30 minutes, and her words were simple and direct. She explained what the Krell wanted and what humanity would lose by accepting. She talked about freedom and dignity and the right to determine their own future. She reminded everyone that humanity had survived impossible challenges before and could do it again. When she finished, she asked for a vote. The chamber was silent for a moment that seemed to stretch forever. Then one by one the representatives stood to show their support. First dozens, then hundreds, then nearly everyone in the room. The vote was not unanimous but it was clear. Humanity would reject the Krell offer and prepare for war. The news spread across human space like a shockwave. On every colony world, in every space station, on every ship traveling between the stars, humans heard the decision and understood what it meant. Some wept. Some prayed. Some gathered with friends and family to share what might be their last peaceful moments. But most felt something else. They felt pride that their species had chosen to stand up rather than kneel down. They felt determination to do whatever needed to be done. They felt a unity that humanity had not known since the early days when everyone still lived on Earth and faced challenges together. General Bradford immediately began mobilizing every ship and soldier that humanity possessed. Factories that had been making colony equipment started making weapons instead. Scientists who had been studying alien planets started working on new defensive technologies. Ordinary civilians volunteered by the millions to join the military or work in critical industries. Sarah returned to the horizon with new orders. She was to take her ship to the furthest human colony and begin evacuating civilians before the Krell arrived. It was evacuation duty, thankless and exhausting, but she understood why it mattered. Every human saved was another person who could rebuild after the war. Every child evacuated was a future that the Krell could not take from them. Ambassador Martinez was given a different assignment. He was to record a message to be sent to the Krell explaining humanity's decision. He spent hours writing and rewriting it until the words were exactly right. When he finally recorded it, his voice was calm and his message was clear. High Chancellor Vorn and the Krell Dominion, humanity has considered your offer carefully. We understand the power you possess and the consequences of refusing you. But we have decided that there are things more important than survival. Freedom is more important. Dignity is more important. The right to determine our own path is more important. Therefore we reject your demand to join the Dominion. We reject your claim of ownership over our species and our worlds. We choose to remain free even if that choice leads to war. He paused for a moment before continuing. You told us that resistance would only bring suffering. You may be right. But you should understand something about humanity. We have been suffering and struggling and fighting since the moment our species came into existence. We were born on a planet that tried to kill us in 1,000 different ways. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters that should have wiped us out. We are still here because we never accepted defeat even when defeat seemed certain. You think you can break us because you've broken others. But those others were not human. You're about to learn what that difference means. The message continued. This is your warning. Leave human space and never return. We do not want war, but we will not run from it. We will fight you with everything we have for as long as it takes. We will make you regret the day you decided that humanity was worth conquering. This is not a negotiation. This is not a bluff. This is a promise from a species that has never surrendered to anything. Martinez finished the recording and sent it through every channel he could access. It reached the Krell Dominion 3 days later. High Chancellor Vorn watched it in his throne room surrounded by his advisors. When it finished, the room was silent. Then Vorn began to laugh in that grinding stone sound that passed for Krell amusement. They choose extinction, he said to his advisors. They actually choose extinction. How wonderfully foolish. Prepare the fleets. Send word to all our commanders. Humanity will be made an example of. Every species in this galaxy will see what happens to those who refuse the Dominion. We will crush them completely and make sure no one ever makes this mistake again. But one of his advisors, an older Krell named Thex who had conquered 17 civilizations, did not laugh. He had watched Martinez's message carefully and seen something in the human's eyes that made him uneasy. Chancellor, Thex said carefully, perhaps we should reconsider this approach. The humans seem different from other species we have faced. Their history suggests they are capable of extreme resistance. Perhaps we should, Vorn cut him off with a gesture. We have faced resistant species before. They all fell eventually. The humans are no different. They are simply too ignorant to understand how outmatched they are. Send the first fleet to their border colonies. Show them what Dominion power truly means. They will beg for mercy within a month. The orders went out and the Krell war machine began to move. 500 ships gathered at the edge of Krell space, the largest fleet assembled in 50 years. Commander Zalek was given overall command. He was a veteran of 30 campaigns and had never lost a battle. He studied human tactics and technology and was not impressed. Their ships were slow and their weapons were primitive. This would be the easiest conquest of his career. Meanwhile, humanity prepared for the storm that was coming. Every colony on the border began evacuating non-essential personnel. Every defensive platform was activated and stocked with ammunition. Every ship capable of fighting was positioned and ready. The men and women who would face the first Krell attack knew they were outmatched and outgunned. They knew most of them would not survive. But they also knew they were buying time for the rest of humanity. They were the first line of defense, and they would not break easily. Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the horizon 3 days before the Krell were expected to arrive. She had finished evacuating the colony at New Siberia and was heading to her assigned defensive position. Her crew was quiet but focused. They had said their goodbyes to loved ones and made their peace with what was coming. Lieutenant Webb approached and spoke softly. "Captain, the crew wants you to know something. Whatever happens out there, we're proud to serve under you. We're proud to be human. We're proud to stand and fight." Sarah felt tears threaten but she blinked them away. "Tell the crew that the pride is mutual. Tell them that 300 years from now, humans will remember what we did here. They'll remember that we didn't surrender. They'll remember that we fought for them even though we never got to meet them." The lieutenant saluted and returned to his station. Sarah looked out at the stars one more time before the battle. She thought about Earth and home and all the people she would never see again. She thought about the future and whether humanity would have won. Then she stopped thinking and started preparing. The Krell were coming, and humanity was ready to show them exactly what humans could do when pushed to the wall. The war had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.